So why did Lane Kiffin pick LSU, and what's the plan to win? You'll hear from the new head coach. It's Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And as always, thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Monday brought a new day for LSU football as Lane Kiffin was introduced in about an hour-long press conference in the South Stadium Club at Tiger Stadium. I was there, was able to get a question for the new LSU head football coach. Actually did my radio show from South Stadium Club there, sort of bracketed around the press conference. So I want to go through what I thought were the high points. It opened with LSU president Dr. Wade Roos giving some thoughts, Verge Osbury then sharing his statements and sentiments, and then Lane Kiffin with a prepared statement answered about a dozen questions or so. The entirety of the event lasted about an hour. And I think probably what was the themes that were reiterated most were how difficult it was to leave Ole Miss. But Lane Kiffin time and again reiterated that he wanted to find a way to coach his team, and he hopes that in time, maybe some of these wounds at Ole Miss will heal, but made it also very clear why he chose LSU. It was interesting that he noted time and again there were actually four schools among which he was choosing. It was LSU, Florida, Ole Miss, and then we all knew those three. He would not name the fourth. Spoke with Ross Dellinger of Yahoo, who thought maybe it was Penn State who tried to get in the mix, but knowing Lane Kiffin, as Ross does, said there's no way he would ever coach at a cold weather school, hates the cold, loves being in Boca on his boat or coaching football and with his family. So we don't know what the fourth was, but Lane said a lot of the right things that you'd expect about his new school, many of which you'll hear. He talked about his transformation as a coach and ultimately his plan to win at LSU. But as we mentioned, the thing that was sort of top of everyone's mind, and it was the first question out the chute, was how he departed Ole Miss.
That was excruciating and difficult. And like I said, we tried every possible thing for a long time the other night and into the morning. As you saw, the team meeting announcement get pushed back because we were trying to get that done. And I'm very grateful for the chancellor there and Keith Carter, that they listened. We presented a plan how that could be done and give the players the best chance to win in the playoffs. And at the end of the day, that's their decision. And I respect that and made a good point. That may make sense to everybody outside, why the best thing was to keep us all together for the playoffs. And may make sense to all the national media, why that makes sense to do that. But, like he said, he has to live there. And I totally respect that, and I respect their decision and so appreciative for them.
He's essentially telling you that the national media wanted him to coach. He wanted to coach. The players wanted him to coach. But Keith Carter said no, because I have to live there, and pins that on Keith Carter. History will judge Lane Kiffin a certain way for this decision. It's an unprecedented decision, but it's also an unprecedented time. It's the first opportunity to coach in the 12-team playoff era, which is year two, has had the opportunity to leave his team that's in the playoff. I mean, if you rewind the clock 2 years, this Ole Miss team would not be in a 4-team playoff. It would be very similar to what Brian Kelly did. He had a very good team. He left at Notre Dame. That was going to be on the outside of the 4-team playoff looking in, but people said, how could you leave your team that's on the verge potentially of a playoff? But everybody knew it was going to happen. Well, because you have an expanded playoff, I think maybe this would be more akin to leaving a team on the verge of a New Year's Six game, which isn't as abhorrent in the past era as this appears now. But unless and until they change the calendar, this is going to happen again at some point down the road. But from there, Lane Kiffin, and I think what's of greater import to all of you is why Lane Kiffin ultimately chose LSU. Verge Osbury said was a big part of it and laying out the plan. But he said this was the thing that Verge told him that he liked the most.
I'm going to leave you alone, let you coach the team. I like when I hear that. We're going to give you everything to win. I'm going to leave you alone and go coach the team and bring us championships. So, Verge isn't real long-winded in those meetings as some other people, and he gets right to the point. And, I really like that. And so he sparked my interest from the first time I talked to him.
Leadership in place. If you were here for the episode we dropped announcing Lane Kiffin was being hired and went through the initial reaction, the first thing I said was I gave kudos to Verge Osbury. This was his first rodeo leading the search. He's been part of plenty of these, but clearly over 25 years in the LSU athletics department, being part of dozens of searches, he's learned a lot. He's learned well, and clearly they navigated this one perfectly, staying out of the way, letting Lane Kiffin feel welcomed. I would equate it to in sales, if you do sales or have ever done sales, you want to create a buying atmosphere. You want to give someone the opportunity to feel comfortable saying yes, not pressured into a decision. There were no timelines. There were no deadlines. There were no ultimatums given by LSU through all of this. They let Lane Kiffin know that he was their top target, and they were willing to do whatever they had to do to make him feel welcome until they got to a yes. And ultimately, they got to that yes, and Verge Osbury was a huge part of it. Now, the opportunity to coach at LSU was a huge part of it as well. And Lane Kiffin talked about what it was like being an opponent in Tiger Stadium and why being on the home sideline is so impactful.
Oh, man, that feeling on the other sideline, all the way from the warm-ups of those night games, man, it is not. I coached a lot of places, okay, and a lot of road games, NFL, college. There is nothing like the feeling when you're on the other sideline and the intensity that you feel. It's like a weight that you feel. I've talked to head coaches who have been here before, obviously. Okay, and they talk about like feeling on the other sideline, like how they feel lifted up by the crowd and the intensity. Well, when you're on the other sideline, you feel it the other way, and especially as you get to crunch time and overtime at night. So I've felt that, and I always thought to myself, man, what if we had that advantage on our side? So if we combine what we do, the way that we coach players, the systems that we run, and now we have that intensity on our side for the opponent to deal with, again, that's how it painted all together to say, and this is where you're supposed to be.
We're going to talk about what he referenced there, the way they coach players, the systems that they have in place. You're going to hear more about that here in just a quick second, which is fascinating. But something else you heard Lane say there is that he talked to coaches who have coached here before, meaning past LSU head coaches. Well, there are two very obvious ones that he knows, Ed Orgeron and Nick Saban. Well, one of the things that Lane has said throughout this process is that he sought the counsel of mentors. Now, we've told you that for weeks now, that he called everyone he knows, from Nick Saban and Kirby Smart and Jimmy Sexton and obviously Pete Carroll. And Lane was asked what those mentors told him. Now, one he wouldn't mention by name, but it's the one that we all know. Give a listen.
I just talked to them, and then it really was apparent I felt like everybody that I talked to outside of the state that I was in all basically said the same thing, okay? They all said, man, you are going to regret it if you don't take the shot and you don't go to LSU. It's the best job in America, it's the best resources, and to win it. And it's obviously been done here before by a number of people. And, Pete Carroll, really, he told me, that he always told my dad that he'd look out for me. And so when we were talking, he really channeled him, from knowing him for so long, and he said this is exactly what he would do. He would tell you, boy, go get it, go for it. And, Coach Saban kind of coached at another place in this conference, so I can't really say exactly what he said, but I'll say I think the world of Coach Saban, and I respect him, and so there's a reason I'm here.
He's telling you Nick Saban told him take the LSU job. It's something we've told you here for a couple of weeks now, that in his confiding in Nick Saban, that Nick and Kirby and everybody he talked to steered him here, but obviously Nick Saban had a big part of that. So in a sort of weird full circle kind of way, Nick Saban, who won here, loved it here, left for the NFL to scratch that itch, now steered one of his pupils, Lane Kiffin, here at a similar point in his career where Nick was when he was hired. Lane's 50, Nick was 48 when he showed up in Baton Rouge. And it wasn't just Nick Saban, of course. Ed Orgeron who has been on staff with Lane Kiffin, both as an assistant under Lane and assistant with Lane at USC. And Lane Kiffin, the funniest moment of the entire press conference was as Lane Kiffin was talking about landing at the airport and the energy and the power that he felt from all the dignitaries there, from the board of supervisors and the administrators in the airport, and then driving to his office there at Football Operations Center. And he said he immediately felt all of the fear and doubt and anxiety and worry just disappear and knew he had made the right decision. And the funniest moment was when he talked about his friend.
Actually, we were going by Tiger Stadium. I called one person. I called Ed Orgeron. And I said, hey, man, all I can do is, man, this place just makes me want to talk like you right now. I did. I was like, we were in the car, and the kids were in there, and I was like, and the coaches, and they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like channeling Ed right now. I was like, I'm feeling him. Like, I rolled down the window, and I was like, go Tigers to the fans. And I'm like, so I called Ed. I said, I don't know what's going on, man, but I'm feeling you right now. And he's like, Coach, you at the best place in America. So I feel that. So as I thought I would do,
I don't know that anybody has ever flunked the introductory press conference, right? It is a warm and welcoming room when someone new is coming in. Optimism springs eternal, hope abounds, all of it is there. But Lane Kiffin was great. He was light, he was loose, he was warm, he was charming, he was funny, he was all the things that you would expect a guy that you're paying close to $100 million to come be your coach and lead this program, this LSU football program, hopefully back to championships. Now, what about Lane Kiffin's style can we expect? And then ultimately, why did he pick LSU? Well, you heard why he picked LSU, but what is his plan to win? We'll delve into that as we continue here. Locked on LSU. It's your team every day. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. And the variety, it's underrated. Steaks, burgers, comfort meals, sides, desserts. It's one of those gifts that truly fits anyone. Honestly, it's the kind of gift that brings people together and you don't need to guess anyone's size. Save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. So Lane Kiffin said all the right things. He was funny and charming and all the things we said, but they did talk football as well. And this is a guy who's had tremendous amounts of success offensively and at Ole Miss, winning 50 games over the last 5 years. So what about it in his style and system and approach has allowed him to have success?
And I think that a thing that we do extremely well is, we don't just think outside the box. We create a new box. The way that we do things is not traditional, and just because in the book of coaching, this is how we do it, or it was done that way before. We're always looking for new ideas, trying to figure things out, and that started years ago with the innovative offense and changing the style of offense that we played over the years. having a unique offense that I don't feel like is anywhere else in America by the system that we have and how it's run. And then with that, from high school then into portal recruiting and embracing that and embracing the portal and figuring out a way to put the best collection of players together where we were at. And, I think the record shows we did a really good job of that.
It's interesting he talked about not just thinking outside the box, but creating a new box and thinking they're the most innovative and creative. Well, how did they get there to that offensive style?
Remember, I really grew up really under three people. My dad, for my whole life, Monty Kiffin, then Pete Carroll, then Nick Saban. So really, I basically spent the majority of my life with those three defensive minds. Over time, always listening to them, what gave them problems, as three of the best defensive minds to ever coach this game. I mean, how blessed am I that I got to be around those three people? And then think about, okay, combine all that they said and put this thing together. And so it's been a great offensive run because of that. And, we're not going to get up here and talk about individual numbers and stuff like that. But if you research them, I would say, over the last, since we left Alabama, so that's 9 years, okay, if you take points yardage, that's the number one offense combined in all of college football.
The proof is in the pudding. There is no denying that Lane Kiffin is a brilliant offensive mind. He is arguably the best play caller, schemer, offensive game planner there is in the college game today. I mean, that you could certainly make that argument. He sort of laid it out there, but how he got to it was interesting, talking about all the defensive minds and talking to coaches over the years that have been on staff with Lane Kiffin. They do point that out, that he will sit in defensive meetings and ask defensive coaches about things and exactly what he just said there. What gives them trouble? It's how he tries to craft his offense by what the defense is thinking. It's certainly an interesting way to go about it. But Lane Kiffin, of course, doesn't come without some baggage. Listen, the way he exited Oxford is obviously part of his story. Leaving Tennessee after one season, getting fired on the tarmac at USC. You're being hired by the Raiders at 31 and then having a real ugly falling out with Al Davis at the time. Well, now you have a more mature Lane Kiffin, who clearly feels like he's used all these experiences to his advantage over the years.
Uniquely prepared at 50 years old for this job, to have been so many places, done good things, made a lot of mistakes, and made them really early on. Like someone said, you made mistakes on the national stage at an age in your 30s and early 30s that coaches aren't even head coaches yet, let alone they're not on the national stage. So I got to learn from those. I'm 50. This is my sixth head job. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever done that. So it's not necessarily great in some ways. They weren't all by choice. But what that does is, if you take all that information and you keep it and you collect it and you learn from the good, from the bad, that's experience. Just like an experienced quarterback's a lot better later on. Experienced coaches. And some of those coaches, especially those two I talked to, they would tell you, man, at this age right now, where I am, is when they really figured it all out. I think, I may be wrong on this, I bet you that Coach Carroll's probably 50 when he takes USC, and Coach Saban, when he takes Alabama's 55. So, you figure things out as you go with all those experiences and having multiple head jobs like they had before, and then you become even better.
I think it is fair to say the evolution of Lane Kiffin as a coach is obvious, and he has gotten better. That's why when he was a coordinator at Alabama, where he landed was at FAU, he couldn't get a better job. And then even after he went from FAU to Ole Miss 4 years ago, he wanted the LSU and Florida jobs 4 years ago. Neither would interview him. So yes, it is fair to say that there has been an evolution of Lane Kiffin as a coach during his career, as you'd expect. Is this the final stop for him? That's what remains to be seen. But even if it's not, what can they achieve together with their resources in between? That's going to be the fascinating question. So how do they do that? Well, signing day is coming up on Wednesday, and Lane Kiffin did lay out a couple of more tidbits that I thought were fascinating, including the question I asked him. You'll hear that next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when the great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Also, prices include fees up front, which I love. So there's no last-second surprises at checkout. And alerts for teams and matches make it easy to grab tickets the moment they drop instead of missing out. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. So with all the fanfare around the press conference subsiding, they have to get to work. Signing day is Wednesday, the beginning of the early signing period. And LSU currently has 16 commits, and they have to hold on to those and see who else might be able to jump into the class. And Lane Kiffin did quickly lay out what the initial roster plan is for he and his staff.
We have big picture thinking too. So we're not reaching or we're not signing kids because they're from this school or that school or any of that stuff. Okay? We're going to sign the best players that we can on Wednesday, then go to the portal, which I have zero concern about the interest of players with that. Because I know what the interest was of players nationally to come play for us where we were just at. And now when you put that with this stadium, with that logo, I mean,
we got time for two more rap and then Ross.
Makes me want to go get on the phone right now, but the portal's not open.
So clearly, I don't think he intended that to be a dig at Ole Miss, but it is illustrative of what he feels about the opportunity because of the resources he has. So I asked the question of Lane Kiffin about the presentation, the NIL presentation that LSU made to him throughout this process and how much of a factor that weighed in his decision.
I said through the process, okay, I'm never going to make a decision on money. And I'm telling you right now, I don't know what my contract is here. That's not very financially responsible, okay? I'm sure it's really good, okay? I don't know what it is, nor did I know at the other places what the numbers were. Because I said in the beginning, I told Jimmy Sexton, don't tell me the numbers, okay? I want to make a decision that has nothing to do with money for me. Now, tell me the numbers in the plan for what the money is for the players. Because that's everything in that area to me, okay? Not what I make, what they make to understand how can you build this. And if you're going to make a change and you're going to move and all these people are going to move and you're going to do all this and go through all that, which was a very challenging, obviously, last 48 hours, in a lot of ways sucked. It's the only way I can describe it. It sucked for a lot of people. And there was no way to possibly do it, in my opinion, any better than we did from a timing standpoint, because it's a bad scheduling system of how it's set up, and eventually, hopefully, it gets like the NFL where you can't do that in the season and don't have to make those decisions. But in that, it was very important and very critical, and Verge and his team had a really, really good plan, and even talked to some donors that are part of that plan here to see exactly how does that work. And there's a great plan here. There's a great plan of how we can come together with what we bring and what players around the country want to play for us and play in our systems, and then have that support to be able to do that so that they want to play for us and they get taken care of financially, which obviously nowadays is the world of college football, and it's very important and critical to them, which it should be. And this was the best setup. So that definitely played a factor into it. Because I don't care what your systems are, without good players, they don't work. So I actually asked today about my contract, not the numbers, I still don't know them. And I said, hey, just in case I get asked on it. And he said, basically, all four were extremely similar, okay, contracts for me. But in the process of figuring out the NIL packages, those were not similar. Those were not the same. And that's a big part of it.
His pay was similar with all four contracts. The NIL package was not similar. I want to refer you again. If you're an everydayer, you heard it, but 2 weekends ago, I did an episode when the details of Lane Kiffin's contract leaked. And I talked about the details of that contract, but more importantly, I talked about that, the NIL component, and how LSU, through the NILSU Max program, is doing what Lane Kiffin was talking about there. If you're interested in how LSU is doing that, go back and check out that episode. Trust me, you'll be glad you did, because LSU has been working for nearly 2 years on exactly what Lane Kiffin was talking about. And ultimately, that was the single biggest thing that was the differentiator with these other very good opportunities. Not the pay. He was going to make his money no matter what. But how is LSU going to get the money to the players through legitimate NIL to keep the roster robust? That was the differentiator. That is a giant reason why Lane Kiffin is LSU's coach today. And a giant step on Wednesday with signing day. And we'll be right here every single day during the Lane Kiffin era and every day on Locked on LSU. So please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU. It's your team every day.